Welcome to Small Business Saturdays video series with your host and my husband.
And my dad, Aaron Montgomery.
Join the conversation.
Let's talk some business.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome into Small Business Saturdays. My name is Aaron Montgomery, and you can find me at oursuccessgroup.com. I hope everybody is having a great Saturday morning and everything's going very well for you. Today, we are going to get into what is looking at my notes here, the ninth step on our 13-step process here of success, where we're breaking down the fundamentals of business success. And really, these principles can be used for any area of your life, but we like to talk about them as they relate to our businesses. And with that in mind, let's just take a quick walk through where we've been so far on this journey. The previous 8 weeks here, we started off talking about empowering ourselves, taking 100% responsibility, and really just owning our own success, not giving away our power. And the E plus R equals O model, where the event, things we can't change, we don't have any control over. Then you've got the response, which is your thoughts, actions, and what you promote or allow. And then those two things added together equal your outcome. So, excuse me. Good morning, Jerry, and good morning, Chuck. Thank you guys for being here. All right. So that was week one, empower yourself. Week two, we talked about finding our purpose, just understanding why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing, and really getting into that, because that gives us that ability, that power to overcome challenges, that passion to work hard, and all of the things that we need kind of in our core to succeed. And so we need to be in alignment with that. So we have to figure out what that purpose is first. And then after that, we needed to decide what we desire, what we want. And that's all about not being greedy and materialistic and, I can't say what I want because for fear of getting ridiculed that, you want too much. You want to be $1 million business. Oh my gosh, that's too much, right? No, you want to be $1 billion business, whatever it is for you. Deciding what you require is really about giving you the roadmap, the things that you desire, the things that you want. Those are actually what is your purpose, what it is. Those are your special gifts. And so when you get those gifts, then you can share those gifts too. So that's what that was all about. They're kind of the roadmap for what we're meant to do. Next, we had to reignite self-trust. So just kind of make it possible to believe first. Most people have the concept of, well, I'll believe it when I see it. But the reality is, everything that we want in our lives, you have to believe it first, and then you will see it. So we had to kind of reignite that self-trust by changing some ways that we went about operating there. Then after that, we had to become a goal getter, get really clear about what our goals are, and in a very specific format of how much and by when. After that, we were taking productive actions, just basically understanding how to prioritize, spending our time focused on the ideal customers and focused on what it is that we really want. So that way we're not just chasing around everybody else's dreams and wishes, that we have very specific goals that we're getting to. And then after that, we had to be willing to do the work. We had to be persistent and repeat and then start building momentum, right? There's no magic bullet. There's no, I'm going to do this today and tomorrow I'm going to be great success. It's I'm going to do this today and I'm going to keep doing this the day after that. And then I'm going to do more the day after that. And I'm going to get 1% better every day. And I'm going to keep growing, keep building, keep going, and then, you will all of a sudden show up as an overnight success after putting in years and years of work, right? So it doesn't always have to be years and years, but when we're making big changes and when we're growing and improving, there's some effort. There's going to be some challenges along the way. There's going to be a need to be persistent for a long period of time. But if you look back a couple of years ago and think about where you were a couple of years ago, and if you've been working on constantly improving over the last couple of years, I know for me, if I look back a couple of years ago, I go, oh my gosh, wow, how far have I come? but then the reality is I know I have a ways to go yet. So I'm going to keep trying to implement, keep trying to learn, and keep trying to get better every day. So that was being willing to do the work. And then last week we talked about masterminding our way to success. And I gave you the formula for what a real mastermind is. Not masterminds kind of caught on. I think there's a lot of them, and that's totally fine. I'm glad. I'm glad people are trying to put together communities that help others. But if you really want a mastermind that's going to work, there's a very specific formula and a very specific thing that you should go into it with, and a very specific thing that and expectations that you should have, and all of those things. So that was last week, and today we are going to conquer fear and thrive. Right? It's all about kind of understanding what fear is, and we've done this before in a previous Small Business Saturdays episode. In fact, if you would like to go check that out, you can listen to the podcast version here. If you go to osg.link/SBS fear, we went through the whole understanding of fear. So if you haven't been through that, we'll do it again today if you want. But I'm going to listen to those who are tuned in live here and find out if you've gone through that, and then we can skip over that part if we'll still describe what it is, but there's a little exercise that we can do in there that will help you understand what fear really is. So we'll get to that in a second. But go check that out, osg.link/SBS fear. And then while you're there, that's our podcast site here. So go ahead and subscribe to Small Business Saturdays, and you can get all the episodes. I think on the podcast side, we're somewhere in the over 100 episodes in there. So you can go check all that out over there. And so osg.link/SBS fear one more time for those of you that are tuned in here. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about conquering our fear, and we're going to feel that fear and do it anyways. And that's the first part of it. But then the second part of it that I'm excited to share, and again, I've shared bits and pieces of this before, so this might be a review for some of you, and that's totally cool. That's how we implement things. We have to go back, we have to review, we have to continue to kind of like look at it from a different perspective. And so it's the mastering the art of success. And this art of success to me is this flywheel. And so we'll get into that. In fact, let's get into that right now. All right. Let me get my notes up here. All right. So let's talk about fear. Fear is this thing that happens to us. It's a protection mechanism that was built into us as as humans, right? It's kind of one of those human nature things. But the mind cannot tell the difference between a real event and a vividly imagined event, And at first you're like, oh, wow, that's a little tough. But the reality is that's wonderful news, because if that's the case, which it is, we can create whatever outcome, whatever feeling, or whatever result that we want through intentionality and practice. And that's all fantastic. But it's also how we scare the hell out of ourselves over things that are just vividly imagined events. So we have to get to a point where we can use fear to our advantage, and then overcome the things that are stopping us from taking the actions which need to be taken to reach success. Jack Canfield says everything we want is on the other side of fear. All of our success, all of the things that we want is right on the other side of fear. So that fear could be asking for help, a fear of looking stupid. It could be that we need to start doing more things to put ourselves out there to the world. We need to do a live video. We need to post more often. We need to become more actively engaged in our local community. Maybe you need to record your elevator pitch and actually put your face on camera for the first time, or maybe it's joining a mastermind group. Maybe that's overwhelming to you. Whatever those things that are holding you back, it's just fear that's holding you back. So what things are you afraid of that you need to do for your business? And when we go back to this understanding that fear is just a vividly imagined event that we're thinking about, that helps us understand that fear is really just an acronym. Fear is just a fantasized experience appearing real, right? And those fears become worries, and those worries eat away at us. And a gentleman named Brian Tracy said this about fear, that worrying is simply negative goal setting. So we are creating what we fear. We are negative goal setting when we're worrying, because worry, fear becomes worry, and worry is simply negative goal setting. So I will go so far as to say fear is simply negative goal setting, right? We are creating what we fear. So what we need to do is we need to start understanding that. We need to start moving into a place where we can get beyond that. Now, I'd like to ask those of you that are tuned in live here to let me know if you have been through the skyscraper exercise with me before. And if you happen to be catching this after the fact, you can come back and catch it at osg.link/SDS fear. So I'm going to give you guys a quick second here to let me know if you have gone through this, and I will skip over this part. I can give you kind of the quick breakdown, but not, I can do it for you here real quick too. So again, let me know if this is skyscraper exercise is something that you've been through, or would you like me to go through it one more time? All right. So I will wait for you guys real quickly here. And I will see if I can fix our internet problems here as well. Looks like we're having some internet challenges. Okay. So can you guys, am I still here? Like I said, I'm getting, okay. Christy says I've not done it yet. Okay. All right. Well, let's do it then. That's a good call. And if you've been through it and you understand what's coming, that's fine. I want you to experience it though. Okay. So let's just do that. And hopefully the internet hangs on here. Let me do one more thing here. Okay. See if I can get a little, there we go. Okay. Now we're back. Okay. All right. So we're going to do this really quick. And here's the deal. If you are going to do this, I'd ask you to play full out and just go along with it. You're going to be totally fine. But I do want you to be seated comfortably. That way, it's comfortably and secure. So you feel really grounded. And then I'm going to ask you to play full out here. All right. And so close those eyes. I'd like you to close your eyes and just get to a space where you can really clearly visualize what I'm about to share. And as I share this in your mind, I want you to transport yourself to the bottom of the tallest building you can imagine. That skyscraper that I mentioned. And I want you to just really visualize that building and what does it look like, right? Get all the details. Is it glass? Does it have concrete? What's the outside environment look like? Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? It can be anything you want. This is your vivid imagination of the tallest building that you can imagine. Maybe it's sunny outside, but this building's so tall that there's clouds at the top of it. Are there birds singing? What are there smells that you can associate with that area? Get real clear on what that building looks like. And then once you've done that, I'd like you to go into the building. And I like you to walk to the elevator. And this elevator just happens to be like a super fast, but super smooth elevator. So you're going to get on that elevator and you're going to go to the top and you go all the way to the top and bing, you're at the top. You exit at the top of this building and you're going to then walk to the place where there is a balcony, right? And you're going to get out to that balcony and you're going to go out there as far as you feel comfortable. Just get to that comfort zone and then just look around again. Vividly imagine what's all around you and what does the sky look like? What's the flooring of the balcony? Is it tile? Is it carpet? Is it, something else, concrete, maybe, whatever it is for you. And all right, so you're there on the balcony. Now, I'd like you to walk a little bit closer towards the edge, right? And you're still firmly planted on the ground. So just where you're comfortable. And then once you get there, this is where you now need to take one more step. Maybe it's a tiny step. Maybe it's a little bit bigger step if you're a ways away from the edge here still. but I want you to get outside of your comfort zone towards the edge to a point where you can look down. Okay. And now I want you to look down, still very firmly planted on the ground, uh, not swaying or anything. You're just nice and balanced, and you're going to keep your balance, and you're going to look down. And I just want you to experience that for a moment. Again, you're very stable and balanced. You're not going anywhere, but I want you to look down. I want you to experience that moment of looking down. Now, I want you to go ahead and turn around and walk or crawl or whatever it takes to get back away from the edge. And then I want you to go back to the elevator, and you're going to go down in the elevator, back in that super fast but super smooth elevator, all the way down to the bottom. And you're going to walk back out of the building. And now you're going to open your eyes. Okay. What were you feeling when you looked down? What was it that you were experiencing? Maybe there was some physiological reactions, maybe a little clammy. I get kind of cotton mouth. You definitely get a little bit dizzy. The heart rate goes up. All of those responses, So what were you feeling? But here's the reality is, right? Now that you're back in reality, what is that reality? You're sitting there in front of whatever screen you're watching this particular program on or listening to, right? Wherever you're at. But yet your body had those physiological responses, right? And that was because you were vividly imagining that event. So ultimately, fear is just a belief we have about a potential future outcome, right? So it's up to us to create different beliefs about future outcomes, create different beliefs about, hey, I'm asking for help. And instead of believing that you're going to be ridiculed for not being smart, you're actually going to be supported and loved and get the answers that you need and get to your idea of success, right? So change that fear into that. Or you have a fear of doing a live video, and the fear is that you're going to look stupid and you're going to say and ah a lot, and everybody's going to laugh at you, right? Or whatever it is for you. Guess what? And yet I believe in this, right? I still have fears when I get onto this. I'm like, okay, is this going to be right? Am I going to have internet issues? Is whatever could happen, right? Fortunately, I was just recording something. It wasn't a live video, but my camera went like this yesterday, just fell, right? And it didn't fall off, thank goodness, didn't break it, but just these things happen, right? So I can imagine all those things, but instead I could imagine that, people listen to this and it helped them and it made a difference in their lives, right? So all of those things. Now, according to study after study, and they've researched this quite a bit, scientists have only been able to prove that we are born with two fears. We only have two fears that we're naturally born with. Every other fear out there is something that we've created over the course of time. So those two fears are a fear of falling. It's kind of why that skyscraper exercise works for almost everybody. And except for the folks that have overcome that fear, right? They've created different vividly imagined results, people that like to jump out of airplanes, things like that, right? And even those folks still have that initial fear. They just enjoy the adrenaline rush. So that's the first fear. And the other fear is a fear of loud noises, right? And maybe when we were young, that is a protection mechanism to make sure that we're tuned in to the world around us, even if we can't see it, right? So kind of like, what was that? What was that? What was that? Right? So those are the only two fears. Beyond those two fears, we've created all of those over time, right? I have a massive fear of needles, and somewhere, some place back in my life, I developed that. Right. So I work and learn to overcome those fears all the time. Right. It could be a fear of confrontation. It could be a fear of public speaking, so we've learned all of those over time. But the great news is we can also unlearn those fears over time. So fear really isn't something to reject or even look down upon. Fear is actually something that we can use as a warning system. It's a great survival tool that when we're fighting for our lives, it helps us stay away from danger, right? It keeps the saber-toothed tiger from eating us. But if you just allow fear to control your every move, it's not a great tool for small businesses, because in our business setting, we're not typically fighting for our lives, right? We're these things are just internal fears. So we need to overcome those fears of taking risks. We need to understand that when we do take a risk, it's a learning experience, and we need to grow from overcoming those fears. We can only gain self-confidence by surviving a risk, and we can only survive a risk if we overcome our fears and take that risk. So we have to look at fear in that way. So with all that being said, let's talk about some techniques for overcoming fears. And the very first technique that we can use to overcome our fears is we have to frame it correctly. So every time you encounter a fear, and I'd ask you to write these down if this is something that you really want to work on and implement into your life. And I want you to write this down. Maybe write it down on a note card or something like that that you can carry with you. Whatever might work for you. But when you have a fear, you need to stop yourself and you need to say this exact phrase: I scare myself by imagining. Right? So when most of us explain what we're afraid of, we say, I'm afraid to, right? But if you can change that verbiage, and language matters in everything that we do, whether you believe that or not, it's absolutely true. Language matters. So we need to be clear and concise. And so if we can change that to I scare myself by imagining, that is the first thing that tells your mind, oh, I scare myself by imagining. I'm scaring myself. I'm not scared of, I scare myself by imagining. And that's starting to tell your mind that it's not a reality, right? And once you have this new perspective, then you can start looking for better imagined results. So that's the first technique. We want to say, I scare myself by imagining. Next, after that, once we recognize those physiological responses that we just had in the skyscraper exercise, when you can start recognizing those in other things that you do, right? Maybe they aren't as strong as that skyscraper exercise, but when your heart starts to race a little bit more, maybe you get a little more dry mouth, or maybe you start to sweat a little bit, your hands get clammy, right? My wife always teased me about how clammy my hands were, right? And I was nervous around her when we were first dating. And so when those physiological triggers start to occur, you say that I scare myself by imagining, but then the next step is to just come back to the present, come back to where you're at right now, because you're getting into that vividly imagined space. And when we come back to the present, it forces us out of that vivid imagination and into reality. So look around. What are you wearing? Where are you physically? Start really just taking stock of all the realities around you and get into that present. Just start with the easiest stuff. I'm wearing a black shirt that has an OSG logo on it, right? That's the easiest thing. But then start getting into the other things. What's directly in front of you? Okay, I got a camera in front of me. Okay, I'm good, right? And what I smell? Okay, I'm in my basement. It doesn't smell. It just smells like my house. Okay, I'm good, right? And what's the temperature around me? Well, it's beautiful, 72 degrees in here right now, right? And so getting all those things kind of checked off until you get to that point where those physiological triggers start to go away. Because once those start to go away, that turns off that fight or flight system, right? And so we can't really make good quality decisions about what's going to happen and change these things into something that's going to serve us, change these vividly imagined results into something that's going to serve us while our fight or flight mechanism is on full blast. So we got to bring that down, right? And maybe you need to even go so far as just to walk out of the room. Our minds kind of work in that way. If you forgot something, walk back into the room where you had remember it. Because for whatever reason, our brains, when we go through a threshold or a door, I was looking over here at a door, it changes things, right? It kind of jolts us. So we just start taking stock of all that. So back to number one, I scare myself by imagining, come back to the present. Then number two is now that we've turned off that fight or flight mechanism, now we need to, this is where we get to go, okay, I'm going to change my fear, which is negative goal setting, into positive goal setting. I want to start imagining the best outcome, right? We've already had a couple of examples of that, but I can give it to you again here in a, so if it's doing live video, right? And I scare myself by imagining people are going to think I'm stupid, but nobody will show up, blah, 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 right? But maybe you'd like to have a podcast or something like that where you can share your story or maybe talk to guests or maybe bring light to an area that is important to you and your business, right? And so maybe you could imagine that you've got a podcast that you've been doing for 10 years that has 440 episodes, because I know you can do it. I've done it. You can do it. Right. So again, just kind of what would be the best possible outcome of you taking that action, right? And we're taking a long time to describe this stuff. If you really start to work and implement this stuff, these can be like bang, 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 fear shows up, you quickly, all this can really happen internally like that, right? I scare myself by imagining that this is going to happen. Okay, what's the reality? I'm right here. What could be the best possible outcome? I would get the support I need. They would say yes. The customer would love the work that I'm going to do for them, right? All of those things can be those best possible outcomes for you. And then you just bang, bang, bang through that. But at first, you got to take it a little bit slower. You got to go, oh, wait. Yep, there's that physiological response. Okay, I got it. Now I know what to do. And you take that step by step a little bit slower. I scare myself by imagining, come back to the present, and then imagine the best possible outcome. All right. So with that being said, I want to share one more thing with you here as a way to kind of overcome a couple of these things. And as I've kind of been working to overcome my fears, I've traveled far and wide. I've gone all the way to Kansas City, going to go up to Chicago, right? Traveled far and wide. Just kidding. That's just jokes, not great jokes, but hey, you get the jokes. In my travels, I found this chant, and it's from an Indian sage or a guru or whatever title works for you. I like the Indian sage myself. And so let's all start by getting in a meditative position. Maybe we'll do a little, I've got my hands together, whatever feels meditative to you, right? Get in that spot. And here we go. And it starts out like this. And it goes, oh, so we get that vibration going. And then we add in, what the heck? And then finally, go for it anyway. Okay. All right. Another bad joke, but you get the point here, right? Oh, what the heck? Go for it anyways. And when you think about that, when you get to that point where you're stuck by fear, you go through those 3 steps that we had before, and then you're imagining that best possible outcome. The final thing is we just got to take the action, right? You get to that point where, okay, and then finally we say, oh, what the heck, go for it anyways. If you think about it in that fun Indian sage way that I was just playing with there, maybe that'll help you remember to go for it anyways. Right. So that best way to move forward. And when we're feeling stuck and overwhelmed and we just want to freeze up, and that's natural, right? We have to realize that fear is just helping keep us from a catastrophic failure. But the old proverb says that to take a journey of 1,000 miles, the first thing you have to do is take one step. Right. And so it's that one step to just go for it anyways. Take one small step. Right. And maybe it's just the need to do one little thing. Maybe you need to say to somebody, I'm going to do this. Right. That could be the first step. right? Was listening in on some stuff that we were going through with some other folks that are part of the Train the Trainer program, part of the Success Principles training certification. And there was all levels of people, from people that have been doing it for years, people like myself who've been certified for a couple of years, and then some newbies that are just getting into it, right? And we were all sharing some stuff. And this one gentleman was talking about some things that he learned to overcome fears, and because he was in a place where he had to make cold calls, and he was deathly afraid of making cold calls. I understand that. I hate the phone myself, right? But he said that what he learned is he had to just figure out what is the one physical step that he could take. What's the very first physical step that he needed to take? If he was going to make a cold call, what would be the very first step that he would need to take? And break it down into the most simple, easy first step. And the first step is put your hand on the phone, right? I've touched the phone. What's the second step? Get to the place where I can dial a number. What's the third step? Dial the number, right? And just keep trying to take those physical steps, actually touching, doing something. And after a while, it'll build up. And that's where we get into the art of success here. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. But before I talk about the art of success, when we talk about, oh, what the heck, go for it anyways, I want to give you one more bit of information here about this, right? There's actually a book out there called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. It's by a lady, Dr. Susan Jeffers, PhD. And it's a really good book. But I want to just kind of paraphrase something out of it. And this is kind of a story that I came up with, but this is kind of the idea of feel the fear and do it anyways. So if you've ever jumped off of a diving board into a pool, most likely due to our natural fear of falling, the very first time you were scared as hell, right? And maybe you're a little kid and you were just scared, and totally natural, totally fine. But when you were afraid, right? Did you get up on that diving board and did you get out there and you go, oh, I got fear. You turned around, you marched back to your mom and dad and you said, you've got to take me to therapy. I'm going to go to therapy 5 days a week and work on this and until I can jump off the highest diving board. I would say most people, that was not the case, right? Yes, there could be an outlier. I'm not going to get in arguments with anybody over that. But the reality was you either held up the line for a bit and till either you finally built up the courage to then walk by all the other kids behind you, or the other kids behind you were going, come on, let's go. I'm excited to jump off this diving board. And so instead of jumping off the diving board, you just kind of drooped off the end and you were scared as heck, but you did it and you landed in the pool and you survived. And you're like, wow, okay, that was actually a little bit fun. And then you wanted to try it again. And, you got out there, maybe you're still a little bit scared, but this time, instead of just closing your eyes and hoping for the best, you opened your eyes and you tried to kind of land. And then, sooner or later, you were then racing to get in line and you were diving off and doing cannonballs and having fun and doing all this stuff. And maybe you were then going to the higher one. And then, and at a certain point, your parents probably had to drag you away from that pool because you were having so much fun. But it all started off with being deathly afraid of jumping off that diving board, right? The same thing happens when we learn to walk. We just don't remember that far back typically. But when you learn to walk, the exact same thing happened. You fell a few times. Maybe you got hurt, maybe you were crying. But guess what? You kept getting up. You kept trying. You'd use the furniture. You'd hold on to a hand. And sooner or later, you were running around your house, driving your parents crazy as they were yelling at you to sit down and shut up, right? But you experienced the fear and you did it anyways. You felt the fear and did it anyways. So that's what we've got to get our mindset to. That's where we have to get our mindset. Now, one more thing before we get to the art of success is a gentleman named Senator John McCain. He's passed on. He ran for president against Barack Obama, and they had a had a good race, and Barack Obama won, but he is actually the senator from Arizona. I had an opportunity to meet him when I was in high school, and he had a big impact on me. I just got to say hi, but he was like one of the first kind of famous people that I had met, and he was just really down to earth guy. So anyhow, I've always kind of enjoyed reading some of his quotes, and he was a prisoner of war and faced some pretty big fears. And so he said this about fear. He said, "We're taught to understand correctly that courage is not the absence of fear, but the capacity for action despite our fear." Right? He also famously said, "Fear is the opportunity for courage, not proof of cowardice." That this means that because we're afraid of something, it doesn't make us a lesser person. It doesn't make us a coward. In fact, I would go so far as to say, if we have fear of something that we're willing to take on, that, or at least willing to face, right, to have that fear, when we have that fear, we've shown up in a place where we're putting ourselves outside of our comfort zone, because that's where fear shows up at, is just on that border of the comfort zone. And so you're putting yourself in that place to take that courageous action to face your fears. So all of this facing of our fears, though, is not going to do us any good unless we're actually able to then take some action. So as we've talked about here, fear is a good thing, right? Fear is a built-in warning system that something outside of our comfort zone and potential danger might be lurking. And we need to expand our comfort zone. So if we use fear correctly, it actually doesn't stop us from taking action, but instead gives us a brief pause. It gives us that warning sign, that yield sign. Fear should not be a stop sign. Fear is actually a yield sign. And when we use fear, then we make better decisions, we take wiser actions, and we can start to build momentum, right? So the next time you can take even better action, and before you know it, just like jumping off of that diving board, your fear has actually led you to success, led you to joy, led you to happiness, right? So let's talk real quick about what I consider the art of success. This is again, a kind of a flywheel look at things. So very first thing that we have when it comes to our art of success is the planning phase. We need to take the opportunity that fear gave us to just pause and develop a plan. And this is just to break it down into that smaller action, right? We talked about the fear of cold calling, physically putting your hand on the phone, first action. That's our planning, right? So we need to find that first and easiest thing to do. And when I say planning, I don't mean hours and hours of like, oh my God, I got to figure this all out. It's taking that pause, developing a quick, okay, what's the first thing I got to do? That's planning. That's it. Second thing is we need to take action. We need to experience our fear and take that action, right? We just need to do it. Peel the Band-Aid off, so to speak, right? After we've taken the action, then the next thing that we need to do is we need to experience the results, right? And if you've listened to me at all, you know that we just need to take as many actions as we can, and really kind of that's what's going to catapult us to success. But if we don't experience results, if we don't let that most recent action sink in, we're not going to get any value from it. So we need to take in the experience, no matter what happened, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. And we need to kind of start to be able to just take it in, right? Or I don't want you to get into like, oh, what does this mean or anything like that. Just experience it. That's all I'm asking at this point. All right. Did our perception maybe skew the outcome? Did the results possibly mean something else or lead to a different or better outcome? I'm not asking you to answer those questions. I'm asking you just to experience it so you can get to the answers of those questions. And that then leads into the next phase of our art of success here, which is the analysis and learning phase. This step here, though, is only valuable if you fully experience the results, because those results are feedback. No matter what, good, bad, or indifferent, that result is the feedback that you need to get better the next time. So you need to start looking for clues to better actions to take in the future. So once you've analyzed and learned from it, the last phase is to then find the next action, right? We don't want to let the results hinder our momentum. We need to start off every action with the highest of intentions, believing it's possible, right? But we need to leave that action. We need to finish that analysis and learning with very low attachments to the outcome, right? We do not have to let that result define our future success. We need to say, I believe that this is possible. And then if it doesn't happen, we go, okay, well, I learned from that, right? And the reality is when one door closes, it's probably just a sign or an omen or whatever you want to call it, that there's probably another one opening, right? So we need to keep pushing this flywheel around, and we need to be moving towards momentum. All right. So that is it. That's the art of success, right? So we have all of these tools now. We could go back, we can overcome our fear, we can understand that it's a vividly imagined event, and that fear is just negative goal setting. So we're actually attracting what we don't want. And then we can learn how to get beyond it, right? We can say, again, write that down, carry it with you. I scare myself by imagining. Make sure that's a statement that's just burned into your brain. Come back to the present, start thinking about and figuring out a way to most vividly imagine the best possible outcome, and then feel that fear and do it anyways, right? Oh, what the heck? Go for it anyway. Right? Use that. Just like we talked about with jumping off the diving board or walking, right? We took the lumps, but we got there, and guess what? Now we walk around, right? And maybe we've even got to a point where we need to get back to that. Maybe we need to be moving more. I know for myself, I need to be moving more. I did an hour yoga session with my wife last night, and I'm having a hard time moving this morning. So that's just a sign, right? So I experienced the result. Wow, I'm not very flexible. And I can analyze and learn from that, yep, I just need to practice a little bit more. And then I can take the next action. Okay, I'm going to ask my wife today, can we do 30 minutes today together, right? So that's the art of success. That's the process. That's how we get there. So that's what I got for you guys. Let me know what questions you have. Let me know what your thoughts are. I've shared bits and pieces of this all over the place. In fact, maybe big parts of this, but I just think this is so valuable, right? Fear is what's keeping us. Fear is what doesn't allow us to get outside of our comfort zone. And everything we want is just on the other side of fear, just on the other side of our comfort zone. So, all right, you guys, that's what I have for you. Next week, we're going to talk about surrounding ourselves with success. We're going to drop out of the Ain't It Awful Club. We're going to get over and get away from the blaming, complaining, excuse making, so that way we can really fully, truly live inside of that, empowering ourselves and taking 100% responsibility. And that's where we're heading. So that's what I've got for you guys. Do you guys have anything else for me? If not, let's go on and get into our Saturday here. Hopefully everybody's got a great Saturday planned, or whatever day it is that you happen to be tuned in. And we will see you guys again next week. One last thing, actually, that I wanted to share with you guys. I'd highly encourage everybody to do this for me, if you wouldn't mind. Please head over to Small Business Saturdays with an S, SATURDAYS, Small Business Saturdays podcast. So it's a little bit of a long URL, but you can do it. smallbusinesssaturdayspodcast.com. And that will take you over to the podcast version of this program. And there you can subscribe on any of the players that you would listen to your podcast on. If you're if you're not listening to podcasts, I would suggest that you do it. It's a great way to fill time, and if you drive somewhere, or if you're exercising, listening to podcasts are always great, and there's some great podcasts out there. So but I'd love for you to take a listen to Small Business Saturdays. Go back to some episodes that may help you, and see. You may go back and find some gold nuggets in there that maybe I forgot about already. So like I said, we're getting into the neighborhood of 120 episodes over there, and we'll keep growing that every week. So that's what I've got for you guys. And Christy, thank you for being here. I love sharing this particular thing, because every time I share it, I get a little bit better too. So maybe you guys can go out and share it and get a little bit better too. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to everybody next week.